Hey guys, this is GamerCow back at you with another Pokemon TCG discussion video. This time we're rotating. Once we are done with our 2 weeks in Hold on Phantoms, by majority vote we are going to spend 2 weeks in this format, but once we are done with that, we are rotating to Deoxys. So we have 3 sets which are getting rotated out. Kind of strange that so much of this era is like 3 sets only for how many gets rotated. I guess we had a big 5-set rotation going into this, and then it's just been small from there. But it doesn't matter, we have an overview of all the stuff here. I'll go into more detail about what I think is actually important, and some, honorable mentions maybe as well. We do have a few promos to lose as well. The first of the trainer kits gets removed here, and the first of the Pokemon Organized Play series gets removed here. I think a few of these cards, especially like the Metagross, aren't actually rotating because they've had blister pack prints and stuff during the middle of this era, or this year even, but we don't care because they're bad. To put it simply, I mean, are we really going to use this Sceptile when we have the Energy Trans one? I don't think so. So any of these that did get reprinted, who cares? They're bad, so we're not going to play them. There's not a lot of Black Star promos during this time. It is just the Tropical Wind and... Oh, not just the Tropical Wind or the Tidal Wave? It was the one that's in Worlds 06 and 05 that's like, it's number 27, but it's in the Worlds 06 stuff, so I think it's Tropical Tidal Wave. Actually, but it doesn't really matter because it's staying in format. This is the only one which isn't Championship Arena, and it's not amazing if we're being honest, so nobody's gonna miss that too much. There are a few things which are staying in format. We are at the end of 2007 is when Diamond and Pearl set came in, so that's actually its whole new thing, and there are no cards in that set that I could see which will be staying in format that weren't already in format. So stuff like Super Scoop Up and Switch, obviously is still in the format. Energy Switch, etc. There's some cards that are reprinted, but all of them are already staying in format. So these are the big ones. From the first set of the next era, Crystal Guardians, we maintain, we keep Bill's Maintenance and Celio's Network. Celio's Network is pretty important until we get to Bebe Search in the Diamond and Pearl stuff. So that's, I think, in 2008 format is when that comes in. So very important card to keep around for any non-EX decks. In Dragon Frontiers, I have no idea why the trainer cards are so yellowed out. That seems to be the only ones affected by this. But Professor Oak's Research and Copycat comes back. So once again, just like in Team Rocket format, we are losing Copycat for one set. So, kind of weird how that works out. Draw options are going to be pretty restricted when we do Crystal Guardians because of this. So, no Research, no Copycat, and no Steven's Advice either. This comes in at the very last set of the Gen 3 block, where it's a reprint set for the most part. There are some new cards in there as well, but there's a lot of reprint stuff in there, including some awesome ones like Blaziken, like Gardevoir, like Delcatty comes back. But there's also some really neat ones here too, some gorgeous alternate artwork stuff. I love this one. Ninetales with Safeguard was initially going to be one of the ones I figured was leaving, but no, it does come back at the end of the era, so there's that. Machamp comes back in as well, so the Overzealous stuff here is really quite strong. If we are start to play EXs, like against my Evolutions, this would be amazing, so definitely a nice one there. And the Lantern. I think I prefer the original art, to be honest, but this has been a pretty good Four Corners type card for the longest time. Just being able to discard all the lightning energy that you're building up with energy grounding and do 90 damage is pretty solid. And yeah, Steven's Advice does get printed in here again. So we're going to be without it for half the format, but it does come back, and that is important. Some honorable mention stuff, I guess, before we get into what I think is the most important stuff down here. We do lose all of the Beldum from this set, and I don't believe any of them get reprinted as we go through, so I'll make special mention of this one down below, but we also lose the Levitate and Call for Family ones, which have been situationally good in different decks. We still have the Delta Species one, which is good though. but we also lose the Metangs, so Levitate and the Metal Load is actually quite good too. So, bit of a shame to have lost those. Minor shoutouts to the Starmie, because that did get played in a couple of decks from Pepper and Leo, so a little bit of a shout out for that, I suppose. When it comes to Fire Red Leaf Green, Dodrio is maybe the biggest one that we just never played. Kind of not entirely sure if it was just bench space, probably just bench space to be honest. It does get shut off by Battle Frontier as well, so there is that. Primeape is very similar to the Dark Slowbro stuff, or Slow King stuff even, that we just didn't end up using because nobody had enough of it at any given time. Cypher has Zero Retreat. I don't know if I mentioned this one down below. I do, so okay. We won't bother with that one just now. Parasect is an intriguing one because you can search for energy out the deck. Also, Paras down here has got Call for Family, so if you can find a time to do that at the start of the game, it would be pretty good. And there was a Raticate as well that I think is a good honorable mention, because Pickup is one of those attacks that you could definitely see a control deck using, and we never ended up trying it. I have 4 of it and I just never played it. Speaking of rats, there's this one as well, is getting rotated, which I also have 4 of. Honorable mentions in this set is mostly the Crobat. Dark Crobat was always on the fringe here. I had one deck that was pretty decent with it, but that was during this set exactly. It lost favor very quickly, to be honest. It's just not quite strong enough, I'm afraid. So, bit of a shame. But, you know, that is how the game goes. And, yeah, I suppose basically all of the EXs down here, and maybe all of the star cards as well. Like, in theory, these could have been decent. Basically all of the X's besides exactly Sneasel, honorable mentions here as well, because they could, in theory, be decent, but they never really were. Suicune, I think, was the closest. Does 90 damage to a stage 2, so that's a lot for a basic on free energy. But I just never really found the time for it, so I don't know. Good card, just missed out. So what is actually good out of these sets? I will just forewarn with this, there are a few cards here which we just didn't pull any copies of, so there is that, but there's also a lot. If we look through just how many of these I have here, there's over 20 cards in every single one of these sets that I think is important, so let's try and quickfire them as much as we can here. Ninetales, with the basic one as well, the non-EX one, was used by Pepper with the Walrein deck, and Walrein is actually a really important one to note too, but we'll get there later. Ninetales is the original Flareon EX, I guess. It forces the opponent to switch, which Flareon doesn't do, but it uses an attack to do the Burn Confusion thing. Very, very irritating. Also extremely powerful with a 100 damage attack here. It's super threatening, but it's also very frail, so I guess there's that. Wigglytuff, I played it, it was decent. Would have been better if we had more copies of it, but there was only 2 in rotation, so whatever. Boost Energy do 80 damage is amazing though, so definitely good. Vileplume, thankfully nobody pulled this, because we saw, as we saw in the previous thing, item lock is dumb. This one's double-sided, so it probably wouldn't have been quite as bad. But it's still really stupid, and yeah, this card would have been extremely irritating. 140 HP with only 1 weakness at the time. This was unusual for EXs at that point, so yeah. Ties in with the Blossom as well, where you evolve to Blossom on the bench and heal 20 each turn from the Vileplume. I will probably miss this card a little bit because I wanted to, if I didn't get a chance to do it, we'll see in the future. I wanted to use this with the Delta species Blossom because it works quite well for the deck, so maybe I'll have played it, who knows, but if not, it's a shame to have lost it. But we do still have Gardevoir to do Heal Dance, so there is that. Shiftry I think is still decent even at the moment. Match your opponent's hand size and do, you know, 80 damage. It lost a fair bit when Desert Shaman was rotated, but there are still ways that you could match the opponent's hand size off of this and still do a lot, so I think it's a decent card. Exploud, very versatile. There's an Exploud EX coming out in the next set that would have been good to have this with. Just so many different attacks that you can do, a lot of different fun stuff with it, so fun card. I traded it out to get some other stuff going though with the Blastoise, so there is that. Milotic, I think the main reason nobody played this in the end is because everyone's playing non-EX decks, like, exclusively, but there are some very, very nasty situations you can set up with this, where you're just healing, like, everything on your board for crazy amounts. I think Blissey EX is going to be my substitute for this sort of thing though, so still good though. Shuppet, alongside the Banette here, the Banette is really good for its Darkness Chant, like just putting 6 damage counters for 2, it was really strong at the time. Synergizes a little bit with the Banette EX because you do extra damage based on a condition at least, so the more stuff's in the discard the better these get. Shadow Crush on the Shuppet is kind of the good synergy with Shadow Steel when you look at it. You discard a Psychic on the Shuppet, discard one of their special energy, and then that special energy allows you to do more with the Banette. So yeah, just losing out on a cheap Kindle is kind of worth noting. Walrein over here synergizes with the Legend Maker Celio, so the Celio puts the energy on top of the deck, damage counter on the Celio, that's fine because then the Walrein accelerates that basic energy onto anywhere you want on the board. So very, very good combo, and it's going to be a shame to miss it. There's a Tyranitar that does this, but it doesn't have the same in-engine thing, and nobody pulled it, so yeah. Huntail was a very solid anti-pick for the Team Rocket Return set, and I did use this with Crobat. It was decent at the time, but it was very hard to set up in the end and just wasn't consistent enough. But yeah, if you had more Scramble energy than I did and more Double Rainbow than I did, you'd probably be able to do a great amount of work with this, to be honest. Scramble to do like 100, or 90 really, is extremely solid, so yeah. Gorbis, likewise, with more DREs and more scrambles, this card gets absolutely ridiculous, and yeah, I mean, we have 3 of each now, so it's possible that one of these things, I'll bring in the Electro thing for this, but yeah, it's the original, like, rack up a ton of energy and do, boatloads of damage for it, so yeah. This Beldum deserves special mention, because yes, it's on a coin flip, but it searches for any metal basic, so that can be your Jirachis, that could be the Eevee if you play Delta Eevees, it could be Pikachu if you want to play the Raichu and stuff, because they are metal, and just any number of like really cool stuff that way. Likewise, the Metagross from this set is also worth noting. Yes, Gardevoir can move metal energy as well now, but that's a separate evolution line. This is really good at being able to like play a switch, then move all of your rainbow based energy to the new active and just do whatever you want, more or less. So really, really cool card. Also a very interesting weakness resistance thing. You just don't see that on anything else, which is pretty cool. Metagross EX was never pulled, but if it was pulled, this would have just made the deck even more ludicrous. Metal Reversal is literally just 40 damage, force the opponent to gust into something you choose, which is crazy, and extra Comet Punch, when you consider the tanking potential of Metagross, can rack up very quickly. Excellent card that we just didn't see. Likewise, I think I was the only one who pulled Regirock EX, so this would have been its own deck, more or less, and we just didn't get it. Would have been really cool, to be honest. Tonnage is a very fun attack, like it's a solid amount of damage, you can do more if you need to as well, and the fact that it just passively heals itself is, yeah, it's just really solid. Not much more to say. Good typing too, obviously. Registeel, we saw a little bit of play from. This is now Sai's thing, because I traded it to him before. It's cool. You know, Steel Wave is a pretty solid attack if your opponent's using the same Pokemon as they would be most of the time, and yes, it was better with Pokemon Nurse in play, but you could still do some fun stuff with it. I mean, Energy Trans is just coming back in, so like that plus Blissey would have been pretty good for it, so yeah, lots of potential for healing. And then Jirachi, I think, was a little underrated at first, apart from me, because I played it with the Metagross stuff, right? Focused on it quite heavily, but it soon caught on, and Pepper and Sai especially have been using this like all the time in their decks ever since. It's a very, very good card. So yeah, just being able to evolve the Pokemon out of the deck is something that we will unfortunately not have anymore. Special mention is still going to Steven here. Yes, it does get a reprint, but we're losing like 4 different draw options, or like more than 4 really. We're losing a lot of draw options going into the start of the next format. So Crystal Guardians in particular is going to be a very awkward set that way. So it's nice to just know that this is coming back, really. But it will be missed. This card is very, very strong still. All of the stadiums in this set are worth noting. Ancient Tomb blocking weakness is really good. Obviously not with EXs, but that's fine. Desert Ruins punishing the heavy EX decks is pretty good, although Cursed Stone can do a somewhat similar thing, because most of the good EXs have got abilities that you would punish. Island Cave is really good with the Wishing Star Jirachi, which is still in format. So this lets you attach an energy to it and then heal it for status conditions, which is great. And then Magnetic Storm doesn't get a reprint until like Gen 6 or something, where it just ignores all resistance. Psychic and Fighting are the 2 types that tend to get resisted the most in this format, especially Fighting, so that's a bit of a miss. And then Ancient Technical Machine Rock is the last one here. This has been not really played in recent times, but against any deck that is heavy on rare candies especially, it has been a big hindrance to know that you might just get devolved at any moment from all of your stuff that way. It's I mean, if you've seen any games of Espeon EX, you'll know that that's important. On to Fire Red Leaf Green, quite a lot of stuff in here. Venusaur EX wasn't pulled, but if it was pulled, you could be guaranteed that I would have gotten it from people, and I would have played the heck out of it once that Blissey came in. This card is not the greatest, but I would have used it because I love this ability. It's probably my favorite overall ability in the game, this the energy transfer stuff. So yeah, we've got Sceptile coming back in that we'll be able to use this with now, so it's not necessary, but it's cool. And yeah, it does a lot of damage as well, I guess. There is that to it. Blastoise, I never had a lot of success with this card somehow. I feel like it's a lot better than it actually let on. I think I just got a bit unlucky with some of the matchups, to be honest. Energy Rain is disgusting. I don't think we're going to see the LBS deck. Maybe we'll see the Lugia one from Leo, but I don't think we're going to see the full LBS, unfortunately. But very iconic deck, at the least. And yeah, Hyper Whirlpool is a crazy attack as well, so powerful stuff on there. Beedrill, this was Pepper's thing. We are going to see this kind of thing come in at the end of Gen 4, I believe, or like close to the end of it, because it did win Worlds, this kind of band attack thing. But yeah, powerful attack on it. Difficult to set up, but even if you just get 2 Beedrill in play, that's 80 damage for free, which is not too bad. Obviously, one of the big losses here is Pidgeot. Yes, it's been hated out of the format quite a bit, because there are just so many ways of stopping it now, but Quick Search is still one of the best abilities ever printed, and, well, we see it nowadays with Arceus, right? Yes, it gets 2 cards, but it's a once per game thing, and it is, like, just as busted. So yeah. Also, Clutch actually is a really good attack here too. 40 and Can't Retreat is surprisingly good for 2 energy. Wish I had a third one, because it would have been good for the Eevee deck. Nidoqueen, another one it would have been good for, actually. Queendom is solid. I had so many different decks to play that I just ended up not playing it more than once. Maybe we'll bring it back for the finale here. This and Nidoking, like, initially don't seem like they're going to be that big of a loss, but Dragon Frontiers has got a Delta species for both of these, and both of them are actually really good in their own right. They would have benefited from having the Pokebodies of these guys around as well. So like Zero Retreat for all the Nidoking stuff, and the extra damage for the Nidorina Neverfin would have been really good, because Nidoqueen's got Vengeance and like Pokemon Search effect, so much more consistency for it too. So it would have been nice to have had them around. Clefable, I think only one of these got pulled, and it was Size. Metronome is still just as strong in attack as it was in the base jungle, so if this was pulled, I mean, I would have played it. It's a fantastic attack on there. So yeah, it just wasn't represented because nobody got it. Speaking of Psy, I think he might miss this Poliwrath very slightly if he did want to play the Poliwrath deck from Unseen Forces again. He did play one of this, because of the ability is kind of nice, and the fact of its water lets it hit some good weaknesses. So, cool card. Victory Bell is the thing for Pepper. Acid Sampler for acid liability decks is great. As Matt showed though, Typhlosion is in format and can do the same thing, more or less. So liability is still in play if we do want to play it. But this was the easiest way of doing it, and it wasn't self-destructive, so there is that. I'm going to put a Farfetch'd in here. Mawile in the next set actually does a very similar thing, but slightly better to this. But I do feel like being able to get Pokemon tools from the deck and attach them to your Pokemon in a format that has Swoop Teleporter available is actually really good. It does get hurt a lot by item lock, I suppose, the whole Swoop thing. But this would let you attach the tools without having to actually play them. So you could play this through item lock, which is the bit that I think is kind of cool. Just a shame it's weak to lightning, I guess, because disconnect is a thing, but oh well. Gengar EX was not really pulled enough. I got one copy of it, and that was it. It would have been cool if we had access to it more properly. I think we could have seen some experimentation with this card, because Poltergeist is a pretty strong attack, and, well, price count if your opponent is ahead is 100 for free, which is really solid. Kingler, the turn 2 specialist. This was size deck for Fire Red and Leaf Green. Search your deck for up to 2 water and attach them to the Kingler, and then just do 70 next turn. Wally made this incredibly dangerous, to be honest, so a little bit of a miss. Electrode EX, I have tried to play this a lot of times in testing stuff, and it has been high risk and reasonably high reward. It's been solid, but I've just not really wanted to end up bringing it most of the time. But we had a few really good games with Egg Bomb, which is the next bit here. We could do this with Gorbis as well, though. That's one thing I might try this week, is, or this like setup, is Gorbis with the new React Energy stuff on there as well. Might actually be worth it. But this kind of energy acceleration is insane, and definitely an interesting option. So, a bit of a shame to miss it. Executor, it was arguably the most consistent. It's hard to say. It's the most consistent Electro deck I played because of Psychic Exchange being able to get a ton of stuff up, but it was also the least consistent one because the damage output is all over the place, right? Big Explosion just is very luck-based, and so your games are kind of out of your hands, but oh my god is it fun. Definitely appreciated that one. Marowak is a bit of a shame to lose because Vengeance is great. There is a Nidoqueen, like I said, that's coming out for Vengeance though, so the attack style is not going to be lost, but yeah, a bit of a shame there. This Chansey is noteworthy because it's better than the other one for Blissey EX, so I'm going to miss this if I want to play Blissey. This Cypher's got 0 retreat if it has any energy attached to it, which is debatably better for the deck. It depends what you're playing exactly, but given that we only have 2 Scizor EX in the format, it is probably better than the Twin Play one, so shame to lose. Gyarados EX was the thing that Pepper had that never quite managed to see play, but it was very annoying when it did actually come out, so Memory Berry, I think, is in the next set, which would have given this access to Rage, so could have actually been pretty impactful at that point. I don't know. Ditto, I never pulled it, so that's why we never saw it. Sai got it, but just didn't build decks with it. Form Variation would have been incredibly good, actually, to switch your this with a basic out you discard, more or less, and then be able to evolve that basic straight away. There are some decks which use this, and it would have been cool, but we just didn't get to see it. This is the best Porygon that's in format at the moment, because you just draw until 4 at the start of the game, so this lets you play a more aggressive version with the Porygon 2. It's not the end of the world, but it is just nice to have around. And then we didn't get any of these between any of the players, but the Legendary Birdie X's in here all have this Legendary Ascent power, which lets you force them into the active when you bench them, and move any number of basic energy of their type to them. The Zapdos in particular is very powerful. This was played quite a lot in decks. The Articuno was the only one that really wasn't, but like all of these would have been very strong, so a little bit of a shame that we're missing them. As far as the trainers go in here, the main ones that we do not get to keep, as the Pokédex, shuffle a deck, look at the top 6. It's fine, right? Like, it's not the best thing out there, but there are some situations where you would really want this kind of effect, so maybe a bit of a shame to lose. Versus Seeker is a big one. We even didn't really play this that much. We played it a bit, but I don't know, it was just really hard to actually fit in the end. Maybe the supporters in this format were just not impactful enough to actually warrant this. I don't know. I ended up playing Holon Transceiver a fair bit last round, and that kind of does the same sort of thing, but this does it with every supporter. It's weird. I'm not really sure how come this didn't see a ton of play either. Very, very strange. Mount Moon is a fairly big one. This is 70 or less HP, so this does cut off a lot of things still. You're cutting off Paragon 2, would be cutting off Delcatty later on. Those are the big ones I can immediately think of, but I know there are quite a few things that Mount Moon shuts off. It shuts off Jirachi, right? So strong denial on that one. And then Experience All is going away. Okay, I played it with the Slowking, and that was about the only space I could find for it, but still a good card nonetheless. And then we finally move on to the Team Rocket set, where there are probably more cards than this that I could mention, but again, there's a lot that we've had to speak on here. Dark Slowking, this kind of kills the Slowking deck for me now, because I've only got 2 regular Slowking. If I had, access to more of those, I would probably still play it. But oh well. This attack was just insane. We didn't get enough of this to really see it at the time, because otherwise we would have been doing 80 to 100 damage for just 2 energy, without too many drawbacks to it. Very, very, very powerful card that we just didn't pull, so fair enough. Steelix, this was purposing a little bit of a boring deck to play and to play against simultaneously, but it is definitely very powerful. Not a lot of actions that you need to take for it, so it's not very complicated, which is probably both a good and a bad thing. But I mean, it's strong. It can use both the damage buff and damage reduction of Dark Metal energies, and it gets them back from the discard. It's got a lot of HP, so you can heal it very readily. Yeah, strong card, just not super interesting, I guess. Dark Hypno was another one for 4 corners type decks if you needed a psychic weakness. 20 damage times the number of the opponent's bench Pokemon. There's been quite a lot of times where benches have just been very small though, so really it's a weird situation. Like, it's a good card, but I don't know. Dark Electrode, alongside the Dragonite stuff we'll talk about in a minute as well, is its own deck here. Search your deck for Darkness or Dark Metal Energy if you don't have any on it. The Dragonite then transfers the energy away, so you can keep doing this every turn. Crazy strong deck, to be honest. Dragtrode was very, very hard to stop for quite a long time, so yeah. And also the Dragonair here, if it's active, lets you search for an evolution card once per turn, so you just get even more setup with it. Hurt a lot by Battle Frontier, I think, is probably the main reason we haven't seen more of this recently, because otherwise it's still an incredibly good deck. Dark Marowak, I did play this a bit at the time. Maybe it's been a bit power crept at this point, but still 70 for free energy or like 1 scramble is pretty solid. Brick Smash is decent as well, because it does let you punch through resistance and stuff like that. And then, yeah, you discard the Pokemon so that the other Marowak gets stronger. So definitely a good card within that deck. Kingdra, there are a couple of different Kingdra that are either available right now or are going to be. There's actually an EX Delta Species Kingdra coming out as well, which is pretty interesting. And giving them no weakness is definitely a good thing when they're all weak to lightning. Even with one of them being a fighting type, it's kind of weird. Yeah, no, just the ability in line with a deck that is all lightning weak otherwise is very, very strong. So yeah, that's a bit of a miss. Armthros, I know that Sai tried Rocklock and we could not make it work consistently. It was a very oppressive deck when it actually did what it wanted to, but like every single thing that I played against it, except for one deck that really didn't do anything, just denied it like too easily. I don't know what, I think it was just too weak to Battle Frontier when we actually got around to testing it. But this card is kind of nuts. If you evolve one of your Pokemon, basically it takes damage, which is crazy. Which, you know, synergizes with the Dark Tyranitar down here that spreads damage if the opponent is a basic. So, very, very gross in a deck that could, like, heavily search the stuff out, too. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Azumarill we didn't see played, and definitely for the best. This could have been played with Crobat, Delta species, and being able to lock out trainers as well as constantly getting this thing back into hand and whatnot. This thing was gross. I didn't realize this was in one of the theme decks. I think I needed the other theme deck for something else, but yeah, I didn't realize that. This card is so nasty. If you evolve your active, then auto paralysis on the opponent. Bleh. it's mean. Jumpluff, there were enough of them, but there wasn't any way of getting the trades with Leo at the time. Yeah, it has a power that stops you from getting KO'd if you flip heads. And Energy Crush can be very, very powerful against decks which require a lot of energy in play. So, disgusting card. Can be used with any energy too. So, definitely gross, but it needs to have you need to have like 3 of it, and there was only ever 2 on one person. So, oh well. Quagsire, I still think was a little bit underexplored, to be honest. I mean, we could have played it with Blastoise, I guess. That was the initial idea. And then I just played like other decks with that instead. Healing damage when you attach an energy to this thing is really, really good, though. And it does scale pretty solidly. It's like 80 for 4 on a non-EX Pokemon with a weakness that doesn't usually matter. It's actually pretty good. Sneasel, there was only 1 copy of in the format, probably for the best. Dragtrode would have been very, very devastating with this, because this card can hit like 140 damage if you put enough darkness energy on it. It's absurd, to be honest. So yeah, probably for the best we didn't have that. I'm putting the Piloswine here. Maybe this should have been an honorable mention, but Piloswine with like Scramble energy and stuff is actually pretty solid. Doing 100 for like 2 energy is pretty good. If you can heal it as well with stuff later on, then that actually makes it just solid in general. Maybe a little bit too expensive, but it's got a lot of HP for a stage 1, so there is that. And then Dark Tyranitar, I wouldn't say this went underexplored, but it definitely, like, it could have been explored more. I never really used Bomb Tower in the end that much. Maybe that's what I'll play this time around, actually. I don't know. We'll see. Grind is crazy because it is on a dark Pokemon, so Darkness Energy and whatnot give this an attack buff, which is absurd. Spinning Tail is really good for just getting a bunch of damage on the opponent's board so that you can punish them later on for it. And Bite Off wasn't the best, admittedly, because there was a lot of non-EXs that were played, but against any EX deck, Bite Off is absurd. So, yeah, no, just a very solid card all around. We've already gone over this one. As far as the items in this set go, I think the main ones, there's a lot of the stadiums and stuff in here, like all of this lot. Rocket's Mission maybe could be an honorable mention because of a lack of draw options, but everything else is focused entirely on supporting the Rocket stuff here, so they don't do anything if you're not playing that kind of deck. These ones, on the other hand, do. Pokemon Retriever is great, is a bit quicker than Hold-On Farmer, so there are definitely decks that will want that. Plus, you know, you can get one of the Pokemon just back into hand if that's all you need that turn. So, powerful card, shame to miss it. Power Hand Extension, kind of another one. If you are behind on prizes, this is a Pokemon Catcher, or sometimes it can be a Energy Disruptor as well if you want it to be. Really, really good card, gonna be a shame to miss that. Surprise Time Machine was not something that was playable for a very long time, and then the Evolution deck happened, and all of a sudden it is kind of ludicrous, because this lets you get the Evolutions back into deck without using Super Scoop Up, and if you can search them back out again, you get your Evolve into Play powers once again. Really, really crazy stuff there, so excellent card. And Swoop Teleporter, also kind of underrated in its own way. I think it was just hard to actually fit into most of the decks in the end, but every time this card has come up, it has been pretty dang powerful, to be honest. You can swap out your setup Pokemon for something which can evolve, and then since it's been in play for a turn, you can evolve it straight away. So even if it's like Jirachi that you're forcing out, that doesn't matter because, yeah, you're asleep. Who cares? You're evolving, so you're gonna wake up, and it's great. And then, probably the biggest overall card that we're missing here is Rocket's Admin. One of the things that I have heard that a lot of people don't like about the 07 format is how there's a lack of hand disruption in the format, or a lack of like interaction, I guess, with what the opponent is doing. And there's like Vaporeon EX, and that's about it. Rocket's Admin took a while to fully take off, we will be honest, but basically every deck at this point is playing as many of this card as we have access to, which is 3 or 4 depending on who you are in a draft. And yeah, this is going to be the biggest miss. It's like, now we don't have any way of interacting with the opponent that way. There's like no comeback, if you will, from it. Because one of the things this does really well is like late game is like, oh man, my EX have been KO'd, so I'm down. No, my opponent's down to like 1 or 2 prizes. I will admin them down, and it's very hard to come back from that if you can disable their support engine and just go admin to 1 or 2. And we do not have access to that anymore. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a game changer on that aspect. So those are the main things. Again, I'm sure there's more that people would say, oh yeah, I played this back then, like I played my Dark Houndoom and it was amazing, but I don't think it's very good. So, you know, I'm trying to be as generous as I can with this sort of thing, but like there's a Jigglypuff over here, I guess, is an honorable thing, but who really cares? There's a lot of cards that are missing here. For only 3 sets too. Surprising just how many of these make a big impact. But looking forward, there's a lot of exciting stuff to see, and we're in just about the start of the next generation, which is going to be crazy. So yeah, hopefully you found this informative, and we shall see what comes up in 2007. So till then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.